everyone who gave their performance, gave themselves, gave so much.
Thank you so much.
I really, really enjoyed it. And I have a few questions for Vera, and then we'll open it up. So, Vera, can you tell us a bit about the processes that have been happening this week and that have led you to this point where we are now?
Yeah. So we used a lot of processes coming from free writing, automatic writing, trying to write without knowing so much what you're writing about, not censoring, not deciding. And then we used it also with our bodies in space, with speech. That was part of it. Then we also used other things like noticing what's going on in you and trying to have it resonate, manifest in your behavior, your body, your actions. We did some hand work, either in that sense of not knowing or noticing, manifesting, but also using it to translate some text into gesture, into fingers, hands, arms, face. A bit also to use outside sources, to use these processes with outside sources instead of just with things that are going on in you, with you. What else did we do?
The knowing and not knowing, maybe?
That I mentioned already. Guys, if you...
The opposite.
Yes, very important. We played with our habitual movements and also with finding what are the opposite qualities of them and playing with the opposites and also mixing habitual and opposite and see what is the third thing that shows up. Also, we did mix the not knowing so much what you're doing with noticing and manifesting and mixing both and seeing what comes out of both. Also, learning a little speech by heart, finding a way of saying it and mixing it with your sequence of which you translated from the text. Processes of this kind.
And are these tasks which have come out of your choreographic process? Are they? How do they sit in relation to your choreographic process, or is it something that you reserve for a workshop context?
It's tools I've been using to bring up material, trying to be in a place which is as much as possible both conscious and a bit more unconscious, both rational and a bit less rational. So trying to find tools to work, finding materials that are in those, like coming back and forth in those two areas. And also trying to find ways of working which combine different types of resources we have in the body as performers. I come from a very just dance space, and at some point I wanted to join other tools in my practice. So,
where did you source those other tools from? Did they come out of the dance practice, as in dancing kind of just also lending itself to a practice of using the voice in a sort of dancerly way, or did you go elsewhere and source practices from voice
also,
practitioners? Or
yes, I also went
theatre,
looking into theatre, check how they do it, also into writing, check what are possible for writing exercises, writing procedures. Yes, so a bit.
Oh,
yeah.
I wondered if you could, because the title of the workshop is The Thinking Body, And I wondered if you could say a bit about where this comes from, and is it sort of a distinction from other kinds of bodies that you might perceive in dance? I'm not quite sure what I'm saying with that, because obviously all bodies are thinking bodies and all dancing bodies are thinking. But is there something about the thinking bit that you want to elaborate on in performance?
I think it has to do with at least two things. As a dancer, quite a few years ago, when I was starting to dance, I was lacking in the dance I could do as a performer. I was in Ballet Gulbenkian, it was a Lisbon-based company. I was lacking things that I could see in other art forms, for instance, and that would enthusiasm me quite a bit in other art forms that I was lacking in the dance that I was doing then. I found it very strange that I could spend the whole day silent, working silently, like silent in the sense that there were no words for a whole day, or being frustrated that I was getting more things that would fulfill me from film or even from music, a lot from improvised music, that somehow I couldn't find in the dance I was doing then. Also, I had a hard time thinking how can we say things in dance. Dance did not seem the easiest tool to say things, to address issues. So it had a lot to do with those with being disquiet about these things and wanting to nourish the dance with other foods and see what would happen. I was also I was quite attracted by dance theater, but I was also very attracted to very abstract forms of dance. By then I was my mind was in between Pune Bausch and Trisha Brown, and I wanted to do something that would mix both.
What I really enjoy actually about what I saw was it seemed to slide or slip very easily between sort of forms that I didn't know what they might represent. They were not representational, and moments that had more the sense of speech, or it had speech, but more a sense of wanting to say something in particular or make a point or comment. And I really enjoyed the intimacy of those two kinds of approaches or worlds.
Makes me think that also some of these tools are useful to allow things to happen in a process. Of course, we worked for four and a half days, and for instance, this idea of doing without knowing so much what you're doing is a good tool to allow some things that staying always on a decision-making mind frame, on a judging mind frame, and so on, may not come out. Maybe you don't allow them to come out, and I feel at an early stage of a process, and also as to understand yourself as a performer, it's good to allow yourself sometimes to be in that place. And I keep saying, even if what comes out seems uninteresting, seems silly, seems weird, allow it to come out, because also there will be other things that may capture your attention and intrigue you and motivate you. that you could not decide just by rationally thinking about it. So it's good also to think about these things as tools to start bringing out material to see what's going on in you. Because I think when we work, we can decide that I'm interested in such and such issue, and I would like to address certain subject, but I think you also have to see what's going on in you, in your body, in your mind, but somewhere in the back of your mind, see what's going on there, and also take that into account. Imagine maybe you want to do a piece about black, but all you do is about white. Like everything that shows up is white, and you have to
deal with that.
Yes, you have to deal with that. You have to incorporate that because it's apparent. It's coming strongly, so you have to take it into account.
Yeah.
Like I think I want to grab everything that is makes you has a vibration coming up, either rationally or irrationally, consciously or unconsciously. But if it has a strong vibration coming up, then grab it. Either if you know why it's coming or if you don't know why it's coming. Like
something that really struck me today when I was watching in the afternoon and just now was that these were groups of women tuning in, dealing with, noticing, manifesting, like you said, their desires live in front of us, and it felt like there is something political about that already.
Mm-hmm.
And also what I found interesting was this sort of the autonomy of each person. It wasn't like this was a group of women, bush, bash, bosh, women. It wasn't like we are representing women.
Mm.
But I saw women, because women, how many times can I say women? Something about the autonomy of people, allowing different kinds of relationships to appear, and that was very open. And I was wondering, does gender come up in your choreographic process, and what does it bring up in relation to desire and responding to one's desires as a female body?
It's interesting because when I was seeing you people showing up, I really felt, wow, there are men in the room. Big news. Because it's been really like a week of being together with women, but I don't know if what I can answer to your question. I cannot say I have any specific gender issues going on in the work. I think I work with men and women, and they bring whatever they have to bring. It happened that this was a female group, but I'm interested in seeing what's going on in people and playing with that. In terms,
Does anybody else have any questions or want to say anything? Doesn't have to be a question as well. It can be something that you saw. Any people who performed as well, of course.
Or any comments on the people who participated? I don't know, who want to add something that I'm not saying, or I don't know.
Yes.
So it was all improvisation. Do you think is there a particular theme overlaying? Because I think a lot of the performances and how they started and how they progressed had kind of a similar idea to it, but then obviously they developed really differently. And I was just wondering if there was a theme or some idea to the whole project.
I think some of the similar feeling maybe came from the fact that they were using a lot of this idea of the doing with trying not to know what you're doing, so they maybe gave a similar impression, of like the general common impression. Most of it was improvised in those themes and tools, but improvised using those tools. Some things, small things, were set, like their gesture sequences, some of these spoken phrases. Yeah, I think that was it.
I really enjoyed seeing those set moments kind of pop out of something that was a bit more landscape-like. Kind of felt like it was something to hold on to. That it felt very known. It was just a different quality of performance. It was nice to see it in there, all in the same, making the same world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this morning we spoke about existential issues as well as artistic issues in these groups. So then, out of that discussion, in a way, and then we looked back at everything that we had done this week and came to some kind of decision about what to try, in a way. So I think it's a compote.
Yeah.
It shows a selected compote.
Do you feel like that discussion today really pushed it somewhere new?
No, it was very scary because it was like a discussion. I mean, each individual had different aspects of existentialistic issues as well as artistic, so we shared that. And had nothing really in my head to do with what we've been doing, but in a sense that I think that was the beauty of this week. Actually, a lot of it felt very. Start sitting down, writing, discussing, and then all of a sudden you have to get up and move, and you feel like, how on earth is that going to work? But there was this idea of that Vera had is sort of this not knowing, and now take a break from not knowing. So it's constantly sort of feeding in to feel like nothing is right or wrong in a way, which was very liberating. I thought that really for me felt the kind of best thing to take away, this kind of don't worry about doing the right thing.
Yes. Yeah.
I actually would like to hear more about that point. I mean, I understand that, as I can understand from the audience, about the difference between existential issue to artistic issue is about right and wrong, but the approach towards right and wrong, or how did you approach it? What was inside your processing about choice making of distinguishing between the artistic and the existential?
This didn't happen like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did
This was just something we did today, that I proposed today, to write still in a free writing, automatic writing way, but having this idea that we're trying to grab the subject of your fundamental existence issues, okay? But free writing, otherwise you're like, oh, what's my existential issues? So it's like, okay, you can write about it, then write about the tree, and then about your what, and then back to, so like in a bit of a airy way. And the same thing about your artistic fundamental issues. And the idea was to see, okay, in the materials that came out this week, is there anything that connects to these issues of yours? And in your group, are there any connections or contradictions or whatever that you can kind of map out and see in between these two, artistic, existential, and the things we've been doing? Are there any possible logics coming out of it, or illogics, paths, structures, I don't know. How can you put that together as a group? Can you find a way of putting that together as a group? But of course, it was like 2 hours ago, and very difficult to have the time to really have those artistic or existential issues to really contaminate a lot the materials they tried to put together. Yeah. Basically, I don't know if I answered your question, but basically that was what
you did.
Yeah. I have a question that I'd like to open both to you as a choreographer and to the participants as somehow co-creators a lot of this field of integration of movements.
Mm-hmm.
What's the idea?
I mean, the complete creators of. I mean, it's nothing that I choreographed.
Mm-hmm.
I just proposed some tools, and they were working on them.
My curiosity is about the idea of togetherness within the piece. For you, as someone that contained, framed the space, and for you as persons embodying these tasks, scores, and
we had more time to find how to work out with these tools with yourself than with togetherness. We had a little bits like some things they showed on doing some things in contact, and or even like the first group had this objective, this target of let's see how can we work on these things in the idea of togetherness. But it's something that would have to be much more touched and worked on, and so this is really like super raw material that does not have a lot of that at stake. A little bit, but it's really green, recent.
It's very interesting, because I had this feeling that all of the performance has a very strong presence as an individual, but in the first group, above this individuality, there was a very strong common presence, a common presence. I was this very strong feeling. I don't know if you saw this, like, it is very different between the groups.
It was what really grabbed my attention was how individuality, they could sit well within a sense of togetherness as well, of something unraveling and moving, but also very specific identities within it. And
I don't know if you people want to say something more. I know, because I was listening a bit to each talk in each group, so I know they had this idea, like how can we approach the idea of being together with these tools, with these materials.
I think we have been, for me, these 4 days have been like questioning everything we were doing. Like, I have a feeling we were putting like two sides that are not two sides and trying to really find them and then mixing them and find everything. So our last task was kind of this togetherness and not togetherness, and trying to also find them and see how we can combine them. And we thought it was really very risky because it's difficult to know what's happening also inside. But in general, I think we have been really exploring possibilities in general.
And then not assuming to know what togetherness consists of. Also, I think it came up a lot in our existential crises, I think. This idea of like common things of like working together, you know, having one continuous energy, you know, I sound critical when I'm saying that. I'm not critical of that at all, but also like posing the question, is that what togetherness is, or is it possible to have something else that is also togetherness, I think. I particularly found that a curious question in our group.
But it's the visibility of the togetherness, I think, is the attention for each other, and as I, as an audience member, can see it in the dramaturgy. So there are, somehow it's very structured. It became just structured in a very strong way. I don't know how, but I think it's the attention that is a more complex way of presence. So it's just, I'm just thinking about how does it work.
Yeah, I think today in my group we didn't work specifically on togetherness. It was in a second group, so we were more kind of individual, and then we had some partner work. But throughout the week we did quite a lot of observing each other and then feeding each other with information. So I think that attention then was sort of present in the moment of performing as well, because we had so much time of every now and then when we sort of present to the others our own discovery or our own improvisation, somebody would watch you and then feed you with what he or she saw. So I think that sort of is strengthened during the week. And today I think, I could know more or less like how other people move, and that is present in the moment of performing, that knowledge of what's going on for the other person.
I guess there's also the thing of being in a workshop context, and this is also an opportunity for all of you to kind of get what you need out of this space and time. And I think I was seeing that happening. It's like you have what you've done in common, and then what else can happen in this space and time.
I think the thing that sort of stood out for me the most this week was also looking at how do we compose something, and how do we make decisions, or when we're improvising, are you aware of composing something, or are you not aware of composing, and how do you make decisions, and what are the habits within that as well. So it's not just a habitual movement in your own body, but also habitual relational. So I think we really kind of try to think about that. Can we not choreograph and still choreograph? Which I thought was very interesting. Yes.
I'm interested in this question of how it feels to the performer, the unknowing knowing, and can I choreograph without knowing and choreographing is the question of yourself as the person who is guiding through the week as being primarily the observer, their practice in their intuition as to how you feel, then you operate in a way of what you see in relation to what they feel, and understand what you see and understand how you guide them or not, or how you know that they're at this point and then tomorrow they'll be at another point, so it's well to leave alone. I'm quite interested in your role as director. Would be too strong a word, because my guess is it's really about enabling the group to kind of find it, but at the same time it is still in way of your prior knowledge and your eye, and your sense of visual referencing, which is also going on. So I'm just interested in how you deal with that.
Makes me want to ask, because I do say a few things sometimes, right? And if we think about what do I usually go at, what would you say? What is my usual things that I go to?
Clarity in what you're doing, even if you're not doing, even if you're not knowing that what you're doing, there's still clarity within it.
Yeah. Yes.
So still committing to it, even if you don't know.
Yeah. Or committing to the task of not knowing so well, for instance. Things like that. Committing clearly to some task, that one or another one.
I also find like a challenge to get to know something that you don't know, because the not knowing is not knowing, but being aware and being interested to know it somehow, like.
Does that draw on the fact that it's always changing then? Because once you feel the unknowing, if you don't know it anymore, so you're going on to the next not knowing. I was interested in observing what I perceive as a slight difference in partly its individuality, but also partly this question around going deeper into the not knowing, which I felt I picked up slightly. I felt I could find it within each of those groups. So I was, it interested me a lot, that distinction.
I think we also spoke quite a lot about it, like what the not knowing means for different people, and then had discussion, and that also kind of helped. And we made different kind of ways of not knowing as well, and practiced them.
And the way you broke us into groups was, I thought, quite particular also. We stuck mainly with the same 4 or 5 people, starting one-on-one and then 2, 3, 4. But you really get to know someone, obviously as you are when you're watching, and start to be very familiar with that body and that mind, and then the viewing is able to be deeper also, and to see what's happening.
Yeah. I do that because I know it's better to have a little bit more intimacy, even if it's slight, very recent also, but still starting to know a little bit more of what comes out of that person and that person, what they tend to bring out in thought, in action, so that they create a little bit of intimacy or a bit of common knowledge.
Something that resonated a lot for me also was this that you mentioned at the beginning, space in between. So it was the shift. So it was like exploring the not knowing, but coming back to the knowing, and or for example being really in sensation, but still being out there. For me, that was something that stuck really strongly. It was a little bit pushing and resisting to indulge somehow. So going deep and exploring, but having the ability to be in control somehow, even when the state is being not in control. I found that really
like having 2 tracks going on at the same time. A part which is noticing, a part which is just not knowing or allowing or not censoring, but at the same time having this thing of having 2 or several tracks by and by going on at the same time.
It's slightly tangential, what I'm going to ask. I think most of us today, we were coming from a 3 days conference in which we were trying to question where are we now in terms of studying dance inside the academia. So I would like to ask you, as a freelance independent choreographer, what do you think a trained inside the academia dancer, dance artist, choreographer needs to know, not know, or unknow?
Stop knowing. What do you need to stop knowing? It's great to tell us what you've been talking about this week, because it was like, oh, they're around, but we don't know what they're doing, and vice versa. I would say it's a responsibility question. No, but
responsible. I don't want you to represent everybody.
Yeah. No, but it's a very important question, and looking a bit to the last few years in the dance scene, maybe 10, 15, maybe, I don't know, 20, I don't know, but 10, 15, I see coming back to the body a bit. There was quite a strong conceptual wave for a while, but I could see at some point in that wave that young performers, students were suddenly beginning to lack a bit their body-mind possibilities, right? And I see also that that's also starting to have a new layer, new wave where actually it's young people and students really needing and asking to go back to their bodies, and but also not completely unknowing or putting completely away this conceptual time, let's say. So I think it's a good moment to try and deal with both places and both realms, and I think it's complicated to go too much on one side and complicated to go too much on the other side. It's not easy to do everything at the same time, but I think it's important to try to work on that. I would also say that it's great for. Well, I would also say that a big part of dance in the last 20, 30, I don't know how many more years, has been very contaminated by many resources, and art forms. And sometimes it seems that makes dance become performance art, for instance. And that dance would end if it goes on mixing and using every possible thing. That it would end as an art in itself. And I have to say, sometimes I ask myself if it was a good idea for dance to become an art in itself. Which can be a strange thing to say, but when I think that dance was part of other art forms before it.
Because now it's competing?
No. When I think that dance became autonomous at some point, like it was part of operas or this or that, multi-art form events or forms, then at some point it became autonomous. But then it has to deal with so many problems about autonomy, because it lacks.
It was institutional, actually. The way that dance became autonomous, it was in the institutional fact. The way that we started writing choreography on the paper, it was institutional, and it was also elitist as a process.
So, on the one hand, I think it's very important for dancers, performers, students to have those other tools which are not just pure dance. And on the other hand, I see that dance has, and that throughout the 20th century, has deepened enormously its knowledge and its knowledge of body and mind, and I think that dancers are really privileged people, especially in our society, like the Western, which lost so much of its possibilities of ritual in action, or lost a lot of possibilities of going out of daily, quotidian, utilitarian activities. It's a big privilege to have these this knowledge and these forms of going into other places of existence, which, yeah. So I think it's very important to not lose that too. Very, very important. I think in a way the conceptual wave had a little bit of a going backwards play side to it, and also going forward side. But so I think that really trying to not lose any of these tools is important, very important. Even when a dance, when people that have acquired and dived into this type of knowledge and in this type of activity, even when they do things which don't look too much like dance, still I believe that that knowledge is present in what they do, and it's a very it's a knowledge I trust a lot. What the body tells us to do, and so on. Having said that, I think it's very hard to play with all these media tools and areas. It's very vast, but I think it's good to. That would be my answer.
I think maybe we'll call it a night unless anyone has any quick burning questions or things to say. Are we good?
Yeah. I would like to thank Roehampton University and Charlie also in particular, because she was very, very involved in my coming here. But really for this opportunity, which was so nice. And
thank you, and thank you everybody for coming. And